Hello, everyone, and welcome to Past the Noise, the podcast where we have open discussions about whatever topics are in the news or come up or we think are interesting. We certainly invite you to hit us up with your own topics if there's some topic you want us to cover or something interesting you think might be worthy of a discussion. But we certainly thank you for joining us. I am your co host, Elder Michael Hightower, joined as always by Apostle T.B. Walker. There he is. Apostle,
Hola.
how's it going?
Awesome.
Nah,
Awesome.
nah. So, yeah, just want to reiterate again. I'll be throwing the call in link in the comments from time to time. But for sure, I mean, feel free to leave a question or a comment in the comments, or use the call in link to come on and talk to us. Either way, but we certainly want some interaction. Man, we had a great conversation. I thought last week, lots and
Right.
lots of comments, lots and lots of interactions, lots of different perspectives. And so that's what we really are aiming for here is an open conversation that sort of brings in all sorts of perspectives. We're not looking
Right.
for you to agree with me or agree with the apostle or agree with both of us or neither of us. Just whatever you can bring to the conversation, we certainly welcome. I mean, I spend a lot of time consuming news. I know that Apostle spends a lot of time consuming news, but we don't see everything. We don't know
Right.
everything. We don't have. I mean, we have our own specific points of view and whatever. So we ask that you would jump in and lend your voice to the conversation. We think it will make the conversation much better. Just to be honest with you. So again, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining us. Last week Apostle, we had part of our one of our topics was about the Memphis police beating Tyree Nichols to death.
Right.
And at the end of the show, I think Chavez suggested that we should pick this back up this week. Certainly, there would be surely there would be additional information coming forth. There's an ongoing investigation, an ongoing situation. So of course, we kept our eye on it as we do all the news. There was additional news that came out this week. The one of the officers who was at the initial traffic stop
Right.
uh, was fired. The white officer, I think he was the only white officer in either location. It was fired for, among other things, improper use of a taser, and I guess he falsified some report because it's like he wasn't truthful about
Right.
whatever. So that was that. But his part in the incident. When I remembered it, I didn't remember it this way. So I watched the initial traffic stop again. And when you think of these kind of incidents, you think of it starts up at a two, and sort of then somebody says something, it gets sideways,
Right.
and all of a sudden it started at nine. Like they started out as a very violent, intense encounter, especially for a traffic stop, right?
Right.
It just seemed like they were like, real aggressive, dragging him out of the car, cursing, threatening to break his arm if he didn't give him their hands, and lots of other stuff. So they really went in aggressive for whatever reason, and it to me though when I watched it again it was like the for whatever reason this group of officers was sort of prone to violence. Like they're prone to being real aggressive and being real physical with people, even though at least he was partially complying. But they seemed to me that they really took it to the next step, and they felt very comfortable doing so. Of course, knowing that they were wearing body cams and whatnot, they still sort of did, take it to 10 and beyond. And I don't know if you watched um, the video again. If you saw, I'm sure you saw the initial video, the initial
Sure.
traffic. They stopped the car and then dragged them out. What did you make of that? The
Well,
initial sort of interaction.
I think that what I saw, initially, and even I mean, because like you said, it kind of started out at a really, really, really high level, and a lot of that, obviously, unless there's something else here that we don't know,
Hmm.
unless there's some personal background that's been connected, that people have been trying to kind of connect some dots, but other than that, it really kind of shows the relationship that
Hmm.
the police department has with the city, with the
Hmm.
citizens of the city of Memphis. Whether they were having a bad day, I would imagine that that's probably not how they stop everybody.
Right.
But when you have this power, And I think that, when we look at this is power. One of the things about the six cop being, being white is that, I don't see a race issue that you can see right away. I think what you really have is power. And you see this power, if you look at, all these other videos out here of, police officers being dealt with a certain way on TikTok and, Instagram, and you see like cop gets owned, right? One of the things that you find out about this is that police believe they have a power that they actually don't possess, but they've been allowed to have for the longest period of time. The idea that like, you can't move me from this place. It's kind of a new thing that people are, with their phones are finding out like, wow, you really don't have a right to do that. But police officers have been operating in a power for such a long time that I think that in some ways that's what that was. I need to gain power over this citizen. And this is how we've been operating. I mean, you talked about the idea of the camera, and like it kind of shows you that this isn't just being stupid. This is what we do.
Right.
Whether you see it or not, we're kind of used to this. This, so we all kind of falsify. So unless this was caught on other cameras, this seems like kind of par for the course. And that kind of training and mindset and policing is what you're seeing, black or white. That's policing policies that have been allowed to go on in America for the longest time. Because we've been shocked many times by like, how did that stop turn into this? Here's a veteran. He's got a uniform on, but there's a power play. And so he's going to get sprayed in the face. All of those things, we wonder, like, what brought about this anger between the two groups? There is a them and us in policing, and it isn't black or white, it's blue.
No, for sure. It had, you're right. It has nothing to do at all with the race of the officers. And to your earlier point, there are like these assumed powers that that police have, that they can just do anything. They can tell you to do this, and no, there's rules. Like they have to have a reason to stop you. If you refuse to do certain things, you have rights. Like you don't have to do this. You don't have to submit yourself to everything that they say. You have, as a citizen, you have rights. But it's not so much forgotten, but it's sort of been like in our minds that when the police show up, they got the run of the place. Like you can't tell them nothing. You can't refuse to like show them. Like, they ask you for something, you gotta give it to them. It's like, it's not true.
Right.
It's simply not true. And I think that's sort of when people say, well, wait a minute, what are you doing? And then they get upset. I mean, because again, you're treading on their assumed powers, and that gets them upset.
Well, when you think about the idea, when you think about the idea of incarceration in America and the amount of people that are incarcerated in this country, and the fact that we lead the world in incarceration, you really can't have a state of incarceration without a police state. And we have kind of been living in a police state without really feeling it, without really knowing it. Get back in your house, and people have gotten back in that, right? We're blocking that off. You're not going over there. Put that camera away. And it was kind of like, do what the cop says. And we are kind of trained for this police state. Here's how you need to handle those guys. And so even when this initially started some several years ago, we watched, not just Trayvon, but other situations with police. One of the things that was so amazing is that people who are now on the other side started out saying, they should have just listened to the cops. The problem was that when he said, now do the hokey pokey, they just didn't, if he says jump, you say how high. And we didn't hear ourselves, because that's training for the police state. And as we're trained for the police state, the police are trained to be the cops in the police state. And when they're having a tough day, who do you beat on? You can easily beat on one of the people.
Too easily.
Too easily.
Yeah, we have a comment. Let's go. Let's see. Clarice says, I wonder why they kept their cameras on. You would think if they were doing all this brutal stuff, they would try to hide it unless this type of attitude was condoned, until it goes too far, of course.
Well, until it's caught on other cameras. That's what does it. Those guys falsified reports. Falsified
audio too, I think.
He was violent. He reached for my gun. All of those kinds of things. They did this not out of knee jerk. This is not a knee jerk reaction. This was something we do. Listen, I mean, the New York Times was reporting that one of the officers had taken a picture of Tyre Nichols and had sent it to 5 people. Now, initially there was that rumor about the girlfriend, and there was a girlfriend, but this wasn't that. This was taking a picture of him while he's propped up against a police car after the beating, and then texting it to 5 people. Now, he's got 5 people that he thinks would be okay with this picture. There's a culture here. We don't know who they are, but there's a culture here that allows the blue to see citizens adversarially. If he doesn't come out, if he doesn't comply right away, if he doesn't stop right away, there's this is probable cause, and this is a probable cause to give a guy a beating. That's really kind of why when the taser went off and the guy was like, "Yeah, stomp him when you catch him." That's the culture, right? You deserve this. If you run, this is what you're going to get.
What's coming.
That's part of the game.
Yeah, and to Clarice's comment, clearly they thought it would be worse to turn the cameras off than to record what they were doing. Clearly, they thought one was worse than the other. So they're like, keep the cameras on. What are they going to do? I mean, your commanding officer is going to see it. Other officers are going to see it, and you still think turning it off is like, we can't turn them off. We got to turn them on. So,
well, here's the thing: your commanding officer may see it or may not see it. You may know something about the culture,
right?
There were articles here where they kind of stumbled upon something. I go over the recordings once a month, and I kind of stumbled upon something that was said, right?
Yeah.
So if you know the culture, right? If you know how it works, and you realize, like, turn your recordings in, but I'm not going through that unless there's something from internal affairs, unless there's a complaint from somebody. What's the point in listening to what you said all day? Right. So I suspect that there may be a culture that's there, that these cops felt very comfortable leaving the cameras on, knowing that there'd be a much bigger deal. That it's like, now you're in trouble if you didn't turn them on.
Right.
But if you turn them on, nobody's looking. Just make sure you don't break this policy.
Right. Which they did. But we have another comment. Willie May says, comment: having lived in Memphis for many years, Memphis police have been known for extreme force, especially Black police. I've always found that dynamic. I've heard that. I've always found that dynamic interesting. It's sort of like, I guess, wherever you have power, like if you're oppressed generally in your life, wherever you have power, you're going to exercise that power extremely, right?
Right.
To the end, because that's the only place where you have unfettered power. I'm a police officer. This is where my identity is. So that kind of makes sense that people in that part of the world, especially in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, if they were police officers, would have behaved in a way that was extreme.
Well, I mean, but coming from a place where there's segregation, I don't think that the natural extreme. I don't think the extreme is natural. The idea that
no.
So there's something here in the training that has to be there that make now these cops view the public, especially those that they're policing with these Black cops in Black cities. There's something here in the training that now brings them to that very same lens that I think is there in the general understanding of policing. You're the boss. I don't think there's a training in protecting and serve. I think there's really a trained policing in America is how to take charge.
It's that, right? How to take charge of a person, but also you have sort of dynamic where when you because policing is dangerous, right? Policing is dangerous. Right. You're the best cop in the world, and you follow the regulation. It's a dangerous job, and I think when people do dangerous jobs together, there's a bonding that happens that makes that person very unlikely to turn that person, even when you're doing things that are going left. So you see this in policing, in the military. Well, we're band of brothers,
right?
So he went a little left, but we're blood, almost like we're blood brothers. So I'm not going to turn on him because this is our world. We're in this together. We have this unbreakable bond. It's like, I'm not going to I'm not going to say anything against the things that you're doing. And again, it doesn't go down. It doesn't that won't cross color lines. It's like we're all wearing blue. We're all wearing the badge, and then any of us
Right.
could get, shot at any time, whatever the case may be. But I think that they have this thing in their mind is that it's us against them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And and that's where I think where you get so much of the violence. KRS-One, who made a song years ago called Black Cop. You hear NWA, and in the in NWA there's a line, black police showing out for the white cop. That's that's in the music and in the culture. It really shows us that this has been a major problem, in our communities for a long time. And I think again that whole idea is that racism in this country affects everybody. It affects everybody. And I think that there are definitely racist policies that from the very beginning in policing in America, right? So once you join that force, even though it's not overt, you now are going to look at a certain group of people through the lenses and the policy training. Here's how you profile, right? Who are you looking at?
Sure.
Right.
Absolutely.
So when you get trained in that kind of policing, when the cardboard cutouts look a certain way, right? I mean,
Right.
so when you realize and you say, okay, here's the neighborhoods you're going to be policing. What do they look like? So when we talk about criminals, when we talk about the worst of the worst, we're also going to embody that very same view so that when those rookies get out there, they start with an adversarial position against the community, even though they come from the same community. And that's not just, by putting on a uniform, that's by being indoctrinated with policies that said, this is how you get home at night, either him or you.
Right.
And it's going to be you. And that sounds like, man, these people love me. But in reality, it turns them against their own community because they start out with Tyree Nichols, and it's like, yeah, I got to make it home tonight. So it's either me or you, or there isn't a thought that it could be both of us. Well, we just both make it home.
Right. Right. I mean, yeah. No, absolutely. We have another comment. Chavez says, I would like to think that this has nothing to do with race, but there has to be something behind the way that they feel black men need to be policed with extreme force in this country. I think it's more, I think to Apostle's point, I think it's more like an attitude. Like this person just isn't that important. they're just not that valuable. It's just like, so I'm going to treat you like a rag doll because I just don't feel I don't feel any empathy for you. I don't feel any empathy towards you. I don't really care if you're hurt. I don't really care if you're in pain. It's just like I'm doing what I'm doing, and you're sort of like in my way, like you're a nuisance. Like I had to come all the way out here and deal with you. Like it's that kind of attitude that I think it is race based because I think in this country, black people are seen as less valuable than white people. I think that's pretty straightforward and simple. I think that translates to every aspect of our lives, including policing.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, if you look at George Floyd, there were various races out there, right? Various ethnicities out there. And I think, again, that kind of speaks to this very same idea that whether you're black, whether you're white, whether you're Asian, you're in America, you're literally going to be infected with the racism that is here. And what you saw in Memphis was also an effect of the very same racist policies that says this group of people is dangerous. And if you're one of the police, you're going to now you're kind of indoctrinated to agree to that very same extent. What you might think should happen, which would be a greater deal of empathy and understanding, since I understand this community, I think that the indoctrination is greater, and the fear that's placed in police, and even what you see today. I think the problem is so many police have left the departments that we're not getting the best people in policing. Yeah. Memphis they were talking about the struggle that they're having, and whenever employers have a struggle, why do you think that the food doesn't taste as good? Right? And I'll tell you what, you're not getting the best chefs back there.
Right.
As we look and say, these people don't want to work. Guess what? You're not getting the best people at McDonald's, and there's something different in the Big Mac, right? There's something about the food right now that does not taste as good because we're not getting the best and the brightest. Well, what do you think's happening in the police force? So when you're going to keep lowering the bar, you're going to get thugs. And at some point, thugs are going to act like thugs. Well, you just got thugs without a record. So I can pass this, and you just keep lowering it to make sure that I can get through.
Right.
And so eventually you have people who are wearing the badge who have a gang mindset. And what you saw was that very same gang mindset. It fits with the boys in blue today. And you can't reverse that by lowering the bar.
It's the opposite of what will help. I mean,
absolutely,
you just can't do it. Let's take a quick look at this clip from the traffic stop, and then we can wrap up this conversation. But this has been good. So.
Now, Preston Hemphill is one of the first officers seen confronting the 29-year-old. Memphis police stating that officer violated several department policies, including truthfulness and the rules on handling a stun gun. Now, when you take a look at this video, he's the white officer seen using that stun gun during the first police interaction with Nichols.
Martin and all them are over there chasing him. I don't spray myself. Shit, you spray me too, but luckily it didn't get in my eyes, just on my eyebrow. I hope they stomp his ass. I hope they stomp his ass. Smith is calling for other cars because him and Martin are chasing him.
I mean, the tape speaks for itself. It's not, I hope they catch him. I hope he doesn't hurt anybody or himself. It's like, I hope we get some payback, right? Because these two guys and the pepper spraying and spraying each other and a whole bunch of other stuff. But they're mad. I mean, they're mad. They're mad that he got away. They're mad that he defied them, and they're hoping that he gets beat by the other cops. I mean, on his to another cop. That cop talking to a cop. They both have body cams, and he's saying, "I hope they stomp it."
Well, I mean, if you're dealing with a gangster and gangster mentality,
and
if you're talking to other gangsters and you realize that other gangsters are going to be listening to the tape later, then you don't really have a problem when you sound like a gangster. You know, that's what we got to get some payback, right? Right. That's exactly, if you were dealing with a gang member, that's exactly, here's what I hope happens, because he violated the gang rules. See, when it's really no longer the rules of society, no longer even the rules of the police, but when the rules of the police are street rules, then you see what happens. Okay, he ran. This is just a regular street tax. You know you got to take one for the team. Right? Every person in the street knows that if I run and they catch me, I'm right, Freddie Gray.
Right. Yeah.
Right. This is you ran. You know you got to get the little ride. You know, you're gonna get the little bumpy ride that would the rough ride. That was kind of the tax, and that's what was found out in Baltimore. Right? You run. You're gonna get beat down, and you're gonna get the rough ride.
You're gonna get the rough ride.
So they did exactly in Memphis, just several hundred miles away. They were just doing exactly what police have been doing. You have to pay a gang price. That's how we see you. And so we see it like a gang. And so we therefore, come on, take your licks. These are professionals, but this is what we're getting.
No, that's what we're getting. And again, when I watched the tape again, it struck me that if he had not gotten away, he might have been beat to death there.
Right.
Like they were right there at the same spot. I mean, they're tasering him and pepper spraying him and the same thing. It was going to the same place.
Right.
I mean, it was going to the same place. So it's just like, but his for him to say that means that's what he expected. I expect this to
absolutely.
Like, this isn't the first rodeo. Like, this is what happens, right? This is what we do. So he's expressing hope that it happens. It's not a first time thing, right? We've never done this before. This is like, this is what we do. And I hope they're able to go ahead and rough them up a little bit, this is where we are.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Man, so moving on to another topic. A couple of weeks ago, Philadelphia Flyers had a gay pride night. And one of their players, Ivan, make sure I get his name right, Provorov, he came under fire for what was considered to be homophobic actions. So let's take a look at what he did, and we'll talk about it.
A Pride Night celebration at last night's Flyers game is being overshadowed by what one player decided not to do during warm-ups.
Ivan Provorov sat out of warm-ups as the team wore rainbow jerseys in support of the LGBTQ community.
A strange turn of events before the Flyers hosted the Anaheim Ducks tonight. The team wore pride jerseys during warm-ups to celebrate the LGBTQ+ community. However, defenseman Ivan Provorov would not join them on the ice, citing his Russian Orthodox beliefs. Here's what he said after the game.
Yeah, I respect everybody, and I respect everybody's choices. My choice is to stay true to myself and my religion. That's all I'm going to say.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, just simple to the point. I mean, he didn't. I mean, but here's the thing: he's under fire for doing nothing. He's
right
in the locker room and did whatever you do. I mean, stretched, or he watched film, or he did whatever he was doing. They, dehydrating himself up for the game, but he didn't actively do or say anything about the event. He simply refused to participate. And I found it interesting that in both, there was two different broadcasts. The one was like, the event was overshadowed. And the other was like, strange turn of events. What's strange about somebody just saying, I decline to participate? Like, but that is where we are going, where your refusal to participate is going to be a problem. It's no longer like, I'm just not going to do it. It's just like, well, you're not going to wear the rainbow jersey. You're not going to put the rainbow.
Right.
You're not going to do it. Like, so that to me is highly problematic. And I think that it's an interesting way to try to get people to see your point of view, right? I mean, you try to force this guy to do something that he doesn't want to do, and so what we have is just more or less a direct attack on his faith, saying he didn't have a right to express his faith.
Right. Well, I mean, listen. Here's the thing: like, why do we need to celebrate it in the first place? I mean, I think that one of the things that we might need to keep things. Hockey is hockey, baseball is baseball. Because you know what? I mean, I guess the LGBT community looks and says, okay, you're celebrating African-American this, and you're celebrating Latino that. And so you've got all these other celebrations. Why not celebrate? And I wonder if the whole idea of like, okay, why are we celebrating? Why do we need to celebrate that? And why not just play hockey? Right? Mm-hmm. Why not just play baseball, and why politicize? Because these celebrations actually bring about our differences. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they celebrate anything that brings us together. They just are like, okay, this is something you can't understand and you won't have a part of while we're really celebrating this. Right? In some ways, why do we celebrate? Like, if you're a hockey player, why are we celebrating the LGBTQ community in the first place? Right? Because is there a heterosexual celebration?
No.
And to opt out of a celebration, right? Did we have that with Colin Kaepernick?
Mm-hmm.
Right? To opt out of a celebration. Why do we freak out when people just decide, like, listen, you guys celebrate, but I don't want to celebrate.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that part of the celebration is there, but I do think that there is clearly an attack against. I think that when it comes down to it, I couldn't imagine another reason that would be there that would be so incendiary. That somehow, because in some ways, that's really the finger that's really pointed. Like, you guys are really the trouble anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So
right.
In the end of the day, I don't know that is he really under any serious attack though?
Well, let's see.
It was Hockey is for Everyone night in support of LGBTQ2+ rights last night in Philadelphia. So in the warm-up, there were specific jerseys and hockey sticks used. One member of the Philadelphia Flyers, for religious reasons, did not take part in that warm-up. Ivan Provorov is a defenseman and claimed that because of his Russian Orthodox religion, he did not take part in this. This is not good enough. Hockey is for everyone, ... unless you don't agree with gay rights is not the phrasing of this. You're either in this or you're not. And one last point. Nothing scares me more than any human being who says, I'm not doing this because of my religious beliefs. Because when you looked in people's lives, you normally say that publicly, you'd throw up at what you saw. You would throw up at what you saw. And I have seen that a million times in a lot of different ways. So don't give me that. With respect. Don't give me that because no one's perfect. All right? Don't tell me, don't feed me the religious beliefs line. And all of a sudden the NHL is going to back off this. The National Hockey League today needs to find that organization $1 million and reevaluate how they support gay rights. Because that is insulting. That is the #1 trending topic in Canada. That is insulting what happened in Philadelphia.
Wow.
So that's not a clip from a bootleg, cable stolen thing. That is a mainstream hockey commentator with his own show going off about somebody's religious beliefs. And the player, Provorov, he's not in any danger right now because the team is like, no, we're going to let him do whatever he wants to do. We're not going to force him to wear a certain jersey or anything like that. So they got his back on this one. But this is the first attempt. This is the first salvo of many.
Yep.
This is how this starts. It starts with just, let's lob it out there and see what happens. Let's lob it out there and see what happens. Lob it out there and see what happens. Because if I told you in 1964 that gay marriage was going to be legal all across the country, you would have said, come on, right?
Right.
If I told you in 1984 transgender was going to be a thing. If I told you in 2004 that parents were going to allow their children to be gender fluid or not choose their gender until they were older, or if they
right.
Like a boy feels like a girl, they'll let them get the surgery. But if I told you those things 20, 30, 40 years, you would look at me like I was crazy. And said,
right.
It never happened. But little by little, piece by piece, these things have happened. And what's happening here is an attempt to make your refusal to participate an issue. And you saw how he went after, like, I don't want to hear about your religious beliefs. There's no longer a valid reason. Because if you think about it, other than religious beliefs, I mean, there's really not much else you would really have to stand on, right?
Right.
It's like, now why you're not coming? Now why you're not wearing the jersey? This is just the one. This is subtle, but this is really the first of many attempts that are going to happen to try to force people and coerce them into doing things they don't want to do, or otherwise you're going to be. I mean, this was an attempt to cancel them.
Well, what you have is a shaking of a very sacred tree in America, right? We people have found a way to shake almost every tree, but the faith tree is one that has been sacred. Like it's, you can't touch it. And what you heard from what I heard from him, and you just, I mean, man, the venom and the, the way he was hitting that pin on the table, I don't want to hear it. This is not a guy who's been, following Ivan's life, right? This is not a guy. So this is a guy who's been watching other people. This is a volcano that's been built up over time, right? So and I think what you're saying is so perfect because this is something that has been building up. He's really kind of it's showing us like a small little model of what is there in some ways the American mainstream, where we've just been putting up and dealing with your faith. And you guys you won't do this because of your faith, and you can't marry them because of your faith, and you won't sell them a cake because of your faith. And we put up with you, and we're just about finished. And you can see that he was ready to blow and said, it's no longer valid. And I think that's really powerful because it almost seems as if we've been validating it without really feeling it for a long period of time. And now, as we shake this tree, people who don't want to be canceled are going to jump off this tree. See, one of the things about it is not just the people who stand and Ivan standing, but it is the shaking of this tree that's going to make so many people who are hanging on to the branches, whoever's not really have a good grip on this, they can't stand the scrutiny that's going to come. There's going to be greater calls. And once companies and organizations where there's a greater call that you need to be fined and the numbers are bigger than $1 million. Oh, man.
Yeah. And he was the only one, though. He was the only one not to participate.
One guy.
Everybody else on the team participated.
The Flyers need to be one guy.
One guy.
One jersey, one hockey stick that just wasn't out there.
Just one guy. Just one guy. And then you remember, I mean, we remember when the arguments for gay rights was that we're not bothering anybody. What we do behind closed doors, just leave us alone. It doesn't affect you. My gay marriage won't affect your heterosexual marriage. Why do you care? Why don't you just leave us alone? Well, that's what he was doing. He was leaving you alone. And that's what I'm saying. I'm saying leaving you alone is no longer good enough. You have to wear the pin, you have to wear the colors, you have to overtly support. Otherwise, you are in line to be canceled. Because
you're a bigot.
Yeah, we're no longer going to put up with you on the fence, or on the other side. Like, you got to get off the fence and pick a side. And if you don't pick the right side, then you know what's going to happen. So we've gone from accept us, please accept us, don't beat us up, don't do this, to, oh no, you gotta put the jersey on.
Right.
Put the jersey on. Or else they're gonna fine the Flyers $1 million and he shouldn't play. Like in another interview I saw, his coach was asked a question about, did you consider not playing him in the game?
Right.
I was like, no, I didn't consider that. But that was a real question from a reporter who covers the team.
Absolutely.
That's the guy who snuck in. That's a real question from a beat reporter about a coach thinking about benching someone because they wouldn't wear a gay pride jersey.
Absolutely. But I think all of those, and it's specifically this, but I think all of those, have been, all of that is the political ideologies are encroaching into every area of life. Mm-hmm. I mean, do you believe in Black Lives Matter? And if you don't, then you have a problem. And so we're kind of putting everybody in a position where you got to pick a side. And I think that's as we look at this, even from a biblical standpoint, from a last days perspective, that's really the biggest and probably the scariest element of this time, is that it's going to bring out like what you was hidden and done in the dark comes to light. And that's even thoughts and ideologies. What you're thinking, you could long ago, you could just think it. Now you're going to be put in a position where the company says, hey, this month we're all doing this. Now, are you? This month we're all going here. Hey, we've made a decision. We're going to all pitch in for John and Stan's wedding to each other. And now you got to make a choice. You got to make
You're good.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, and your religious beliefs are no longer a valid excuse.
That's yep.
We don't want to hear it.
Give us some other reason.
We don't want to hear it.
We don't want to hear that. We don't want to hear that. So that's, in some ways of shutting out the gospel and not hearing the truth. We never expected how it would be muffled, but this is one of the ways that people are going to try to muffle it. Now, I applaud my brother for, making a stand.
Mm-hmm.
I applaud him for making a stand. He is setting an example of what we're going to have to do.
You're going to have to do it, knowing that they're going to come and put the mic in your face, knowing you're going to get questions about it over and over. Knowing you're the only one. He can look around and see, I'm the only guy back here. So what's coming, and he stood firm and believed and gave a very simple, calm answer. It wasn't hyperbole. It wasn't that I hate gays. Right. It was like, I stood on my beliefs.
Right. I respect everybody.
I have anything else to say about it. Yeah, I'm not bashing gay. I didn't go out there with an anti-gay sticker on my thing. I'm not going out there. This is right. And in the guy's rant, one of the things he said was at the end, nothing scares him more than somebody who stands on their faith. Nothing scares me more than that. And it sounds like hyperbole and it sounds crazy, but the crazy thing is, I believe him. I believe that to him that's scarier than other things, right? I mean, think about biblically, the disciples were scary to people. They weren't hurting anybody, but Jesus was scary. He's a scary dude. Like, we'd rather have the dude that we know is a convicted criminal rather than
Absolutely.
people are
Absolutely.
blind to getting their sight, but yeah, we want the other guy. You can kill this guy because we're scared of him. And so we think that we're going to be in for different treatment because it's 2023 and we live in an enlightened world. It all cycles back to the same thing. Jesus told us in the Word, they hated me.
That's right.
Not, well, you know what? They might hate you. I don't know. Maybe no. You stand on your faith, they're going to hate you just because the world doesn't love people of faith. They love their own. They're
Right.
not going to love you. They're not going to love you. So we think somehow the world is going to slither through. It's just, it ain't happening.
But it's so amazing when you look at this kind of hatred because
Yeah.
when you think of that whole idea of like if they hated me, they'll hate you.
Mhm.
You really kind of think of people who are standing out maybe in front of an abortion clinic, somebody who's got, who's out there and is, shouting somebody down or, saying, you're the Antichrist spirit and, you're standing for your faith, never realizing that it is simply going to be the quiet, just the announcement that you're not going. That would now bring such animus that the man would want to, just hit it almost seemed like he wanted to break the table. The whole idea of raising the dead and, healing the sick, and that's the guy you want to kill. When you really look at that, it really kind of shows us a supernatural anger that understands something at a different level. Because on a logical level, that's the way he handled it was the way you're supposed to handle it, right? On a logical level. But look what kind of anger it's like irrational anger that it brings about. An irrational anger that put Jesus on the cross, right? Give us Barabbas. Now Barabbas is in jail, and he's these guys also hurt other people. That if you're a terrorist, you also you kind of cut other people too that might be a little innocent. But when you think about Jesus, it brought such anger at the guy who was just standing for something that somehow they couldn't understand. That's what we really have to face. It will be the quiet believer. It'll be a believer that's not out there marching. It's going to be the fact that you just simply stand for what you believe, even in a quiet way. Even if you say, listen, I'm just not going to do it. But you guys go ahead, have fun, knock yourself out. That's going to be the one that we want to burn that house down.
That's exactly right. They're going
to want to kill his career, right?
Yep.
They're going to take aim at him, and they're going to want to somehow kill his career.
Yeah, they can. Absolutely. They're going to try.
They're going to try.
They're going to try. Make an example of them. Now, you don't want this now. You don't want this. You better,
wear the flag. Maybe they try with Dave Chappelle, right?
Yeah. Yep. We have some comments. Let's see. Clarice says, What needs to be defined as support? A person should not be forced to march where the colors or call the person the opposite they are born to be. They are doing exactly what they say Christians do, force it down their throats, telling us accept. That's exactly what's happening. It's exactly now. Support now is you have to show, you have to do something overt to show support. It's no longer good enough to simply say it doesn't bother me or I'm good with it. You have to do something else other than that. That's what they define as support. You have to defend them. You have to vocally say,
agree.
I'm for that. You have to agree with them.
You have to agree.
You have to agree with them.
You have to agree. I think anything other than agreement is bigotry, right? Anything other than agreement in their mind is discrimination. Why wouldn't you wear the pin? Why? I mean, give me a reason why you wouldn't wear the flag. I mean, just drape it around your shoulder. So if you're ashamed of that, then here's what you're saying about me. I don't think that there's a way, and I think they equate from an equality standpoint. Is there a question about whether an Asian person is equal to a black person, right? If you said, I'm not going to take a stand on that, right? There'll be people who would just pull their hair out and say, wait a minute, that's settled. Mm-hmm. I think that the LGBTQ community, 2+, I guess, is also saying, hey, that's settled. It's settled that I am a girl if I say I am. Right. It's settled. And here's the reality. It's not settled. It's not settled. All men are created equal. That's settled. right? We need to live up to it, but that's settled, right?
Right.
The Bible tells us how that works, so that's settled. But this idea that like you were born a man, but now you're really a girl, that's not settled. And I think that's the thing that they're literally saying it to us and to the world. That's a settled reality, and you guys need to come over to our reality, because without that, that makes you crazy to us.
Yeah, and it's just going to get more and more intense as time goes on. Let's see, we have another comment. William May says, "Unfortunately, I fear that standing for the faith is going to be few. I applaud him for boldly standing." Well, your fears are well founded.
Absolutely.
I can't believe that it's possible, but I find it hard to believe that there were no other Christians on the Flyers. No,
I was going to say the exact same thing.
Not a single one. I mean, their roster's got to be like 25, 30 guys. No one else is willing to stand. So it is going to be the few. And again, we hope that he will continue to stand. I mean, it seems like he's grounded, and he's just, again, he was very straightforward and very matter of fact in his statement. Wasn't emotional or anything. Just like, no, I'm not. I'm standing on my beliefs, and I'm not going for it. But certainly, it's going to be few. You're not going to find a lot of people who are willing to answer the questions and say what he just said for the reason we saw in the other tape, which is that to a lot of people, my religious beliefs are no longer a valid reason to not do stuff. It's just not. The people are going to be like, whatever. Because we saw this other religious guy, he said something, and then he was doing, had nothing to do, one had nothing to do with the other. But they're going to try to make that connection and say, you heard him. Try to make that connection and say, oh, if you see these people's lives, you would just be so, you would throw up. Like, what does that have to do with this man standing on his beliefs? And one has nothing to do with the other, but they're trying to mash it all together and say,
right,
this is no longer legitimate. It's no longer legitimate.
Well, I mean, the attack is that religion is for hypocrites, right?
Yeah.
That their lives don't. Religious people are hypocrites. So I think that the idea that, if he's talking to me, that's not going to work with me. But here's the thing, that statement is going to work for a lot of other Christians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's not a valid reason anymore. Mm-hmm. That's no longer a good enough reason to talk about standing on your faith. No, that's not going to happen. And I think that the problem is going to be that many Christians are going to be confronted with that and really believe that hype. That standing on faith isn't a good enough reason not to go. Not standing on faith is not a good enough reason not to be a part of that or to not speak at that forum. That's not good enough. And what other reason can you find? And once the enemy comes in and takes the one reason you have to stand on,
right?
I mean, you gotta fall, right?
You have to.
Once you've allowed him to take the one pillar we stand on, which is faith. When all else fails, the one thing we stand on is faith. Having done all to stand therefore. If he takes that away, don't you have to fall? Don't just being a marginal Christian and standing in the middle of the fence, doesn't that mean that you're going to be, I'm going to spew you out of my mouth?
Yeah.
You're going to be one of those that fall away. You'll stay in the church, but you will never be able to uphold any of the values that come with being a believer.
Right.
And that's how you infiltrate the church. Your faith isn't valid enough for you not to follow the world. You see the trend? We're going in this direction. Can you see the trend? Your faith is not going to stop this trend. If it's really faith, it would not stop this trend. If it's really faith, it would follow this. That's the message that he gave. I don't want to hear that kind of faith. Any faith that says don't do that, that's garbage. Now, is there a faith that I like? Yeah. Faith that would have you wearing the rainbow. No doubt. Put multicolors on that Flyer jersey. Now, that's the faith I like, right? The faith that many of those other Flyers and many other people throughout the NHL who will have these same nights, who will fold like a bunch of lawn chairs. That's the faith that he was. You gave in. Yeah. You grew.
Yeah. And believe me, there'll be another, the Flyers will have another gay pride night. And if he's still on the team, he will have to stand again. If this next year and probably the year after that and the year after that, they're going to keep having him. He's going to keep standing. And part of the enemy's trick is to wear you down. You can stand once, twice,
right,
3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times,
right.
Or will you wear down over time? And I'm okay, I can't do this anymore. I'm good. I'm just gonna do it just to shut their mouths. I mean, that's sort of part of the process as well. Because listen, it can't be stopped. Like the societal decay can't be stopped.
That's right.
And so a lot of things we discussed on this podcast. It's not about, well, here's how we fix it, here's how we change. It's like, no, now you're informed. Now you know the storm is coming, so just grab an umbrella. Don't pray that the storm's not going to come. The storm is coming. The rain is going to fall.
Absolutely.
And so now that you're equipped, now that you know, equip yourself, right? Isn't that what I mean? We're warned over and over again in Scripture. Be ready, be equipped, because I'm telling you, this is what's going to happen. So just go ahead and gird up, because I'm not taking it away. It's not going to just swerve around you. It's not going over your. It's going to hit you square in the chest. And the question is, can you stand? And part of a lot of the scriptures, like to prepare, like so you're not caught unaware.
Right.
Like, okay, we know what's coming. Let's get ready. Like in all other parts of our lives, when we know something's coming, we get ready. When they know a hurricane's coming to Florida, they break out the plywood, they board everything up, they get the sandbags out. They don't wait and say, well, maybe we won't. Maybe we'll. It's like, we're preparing. And so as Christians, we need to be in the preparing business as well, for what is sure to come, and we can see it clear as day. So if you miss it, right, and you're like caught, I mean, what can I tell you? Like
well, one of the things that I think is going to be there is an attack. I mean, as he is, I think that without a doubt, as long as he gets people from the LGBTQ community and people who are in certain places of power coming against him, the attack there is going to be really pretty much straightforward. It's trench to trench warfare. But I think that when it gets difficult is when you have other, I'll put in air quotes, believers who will try to come and talk him into that, who will try to come now and say, hey, you know what? I mean, I'm a Christian just like you, and the reality is, it doesn't take all that. You don't have to do that. Listen, let me give you some scriptures that show you why you need to be more inclusive and why let me show you that. Remember Jesus with the leper? Well, the leper is the transvestite. Do you remember when Jesus let the woman with the issue of blood and touch her? Well, guess what? That's the lesbian. And so they're going to use whether you can stand against those tricks are really going to be because there's no reason for the end time. There's a release of the false prophets, right?
Right.
There's a reason that deception is going to come from within. We'll see the world coming, right? But it'll be some person in the congregation who comes and says, hey, I'm a believer just like you. And I had to grow into this just like you. And here's what the Lord revealed to me. And it's whether they'll be able to really break through that onslaught. Because there's where the enemy is going to come.
Well, that repelling that onslaught will require you to be prayed up and studied up. Like if you don't know,
absolutely,
you easily be swayed. But if you know, you're like, I'm standing on what I know.
Right.
But you got to know.
Absolutely.
And so to your point, there's going to be a sort of a hollowing out. There's a hollowing out now. Sort of people who don't know, or people who are just too weak to stand beyond one. They can take one shot and then it's like they're out.
Right.
So. That's sort of what we're dealing with. You have a lot of weak Christians, and then they're going to, reproduce themselves. That to your point, right? They're going to go around trying to make other weak Christians like themselves, and next thing you know, you're going to have the place full of them.
The blind following the blind. They both fall in the ditch.
Absolutely. We have another comment. Pamela Mazia says, unfortunately, our faith above all others has been inconsistent with what we want to support. Hence, few take us seriously. We compromise too much. We don't always stand on our own truth.
I agree.
That's true. That's a good point. Got to be consistent, and that lack of consistency does sort of provide an opening. Like, they waver sometimes, and we shouldn't be wavering. So that's a good point. I mean, all we can do now is learn from the past, learn that wavering is not good, does not work, and to buck up. I mean, there's nothing else to do really other than that. But yes, we have been on the whole, inconsistent on some things, and we have slowly let things in that we shouldn't have, compromise on things that we shouldn't have, and so yeah, the world will always count on, can we make people regardless of whether or not the people of faith, can we make people compromise? Can we get them to weaken and compromise to the point where we just we all sing kumbaya and we're all on the same page and everyone's supporting this and everyone's doing that and no one's doing and there's no standards. Like a world without standards is sort of where we're heading, right? Where people just do whatever they want and you can't say a thing about it. You got to call him her,
right?
Because they said so, and it's just not going to be any question about it, and that's going to be the case with that as well. Like, why won't you call them by their pronouns?
Right.
Right. And we don't want to hear about your religious beliefs.
Right.
Hear about your faith. Right. So, so when you address them, how will you address them? Will you be bold to say, I see a man, so I'm going to say their name, or I'm going to say he? Are you going to be bold enough to do that? Or are you going to say, you know what, I don't need this hassle, I'm just going to call him her. We need to get.
But you know what? I mean, this has always been what was prophesied, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I agree with Pastor Mazios.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one of the things that happened though is that this was kind of what was told was going to happen. That looked like a destruction. It's one of those things that's kind of like a controlled burn. That like if you don't know it, you kind of think that things burning down. But there are things being burned away. And so we are in a position right now where as a whole, we look horrible, but it was always meant to be that way because so much of it was connected to the world and connected to the church. That was not the church. So much of what we see happening and that's crumbling is not the church. Now, it is the church that, as we see it because it's the buildings there and it's got first and second presbytery. But the truth of the matter is what's decaying around us is not the church. There is a remnant of believers, and though whole congregations could be poisoned, if there's 2 or 3 there, the gathering is going to be of a remnant. It was never going to be of the multitude. So the idea that Rome is burning, it doesn't mean that everything in Rome is burning, right? It means that this burn is going to expose the survivors. There are those that God says, I've hidden. I've got 6,000 that haven't bowed the knee, right? So trauma comes and tears down everything to really show the survivors. Like you tear up a house and then, nothing can live. And then all of a sudden here come a couple of roaches coming out, right? Here's a couple of mice. And what does it do? It just kind of reveals the survivors, right?
Right.
Nothing else could stand, nothing else could live. But out of these ashes, there's still life here. So I think the church has to recognize that it's burning. It looks like it's on fire. It's meant to literally expose those who are real. And that's exactly what's happening right now. And what we're finding out is that we're few and far between. That's what he found out. Right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm sure he's not the only Orthodox something in there, right? That's what he found out. Wow. Not a lot of people are going to stand, just like the book said. Many are going to take the mark, just like the book said, right? So, broad is the way. Only few are going to find this narrow road, just like the book said. So as we're looking at this, there are mega churches all around. The question is going to really come down to like a lot of members. How many members are written in the Lamb's Book of Life? How many are going to stand when the wind comes? That's the idea that things seem to really crumble. This inconsistency has always been the outer shell of the church, but there have been a consistent vein that have persisted since the days of Christ that are going to continue, even in the days where it looks like the church is swamped up. There'll be a remnant. There'll be those in caves, and you'll find that's where the real church is.
Yeah, and like you said, like he found out, he was pretty much on his own, and this time, right, the organization and the league had his back. But there's going to be a next time, and there's going to be a time when they might not. And
that's right.
You got to be ready for that. You got to be ready for the day when the Flyers come in and say, if you don't do this, you're going to sit tonight.
Right.
If you don't do this, we're going to do whatever, void your contract, or whatever they may threaten to it. That's coming. That's the next phase.
Or we're going to add that to the contracts.
Add it to the contract.
These
you
are
must
mandatory.
participate in all these things.
You want to be a part of this? You want your dream to come true? They're going to add it to the contracts. These same kids who like, okay, man, I made it out of there. I can't believe basketball was my ticket. Well, maybe not. Not if you're not willing to wear this twice a year. And I wonder how many will go back and say, "Oh, Pastor, you understand though, right?" Come on, Grandma, you understand. I mean, they talk about 25 million bonus.
Right.
How many people can say, the Lord knows, he understands. That's for your job. You just do what you got to do. He knows your heart. You don't agree with it, but you better get that bag. Right? How many people are saying, what's 10% of 24 million? I'll be praying for you. Just, you'll make the right decision.
Yeah, I mean, sad, but that's how it's going to go.
Absolutely, I believe that.
That's how it's going to go for too many. Listen, we are at a time. Thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
Episode 29.
Great time. Yeah, and episode 29 in the books. Thanks to everyone who watched live, who commented, who jumped in, and those who are watching the replay. We thank you for watching as well. And we just thank you for your continued support. Because you continue to support, and we love it. We love to have these interactions. And
absolutely.
Jump on and give feedback. So we welcome it. You can check us out on Facebook. Send us something on Twitter, YouTube. You can hit us up. If you have an idea for a topic, something you'd like to see us or hear us discuss, send us shoot us something, and certainly we'll take a look. Because like I said, we want to have interactive conversations about topics that interest everyone. So
absolutely.
So again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week right here, Wednesday, 7 p.m. Thank you again, and good night, and God bless.
God bless. Awesome.